without a doubt, its most famous and infamous local was the poet Dylan Thomas, who lived overlooking the estuary in the boathouse.
John, welcome to the Browns Hotel.
Thank
My
you.
name is Ron. Come in,
Ron.
sir.
Thank you very much. All right, so this is the famous bar, yeah?
It is indeed.
And is that the corner?
It is.
Dylan Thomas Corner?
Yes, indeed.
And he actually sat there, did
Would
he?
you like the privilege of having a seat?
Can I sit there?
Certainly.
Oh, lovely. It's, what, this one, is it?
That's the one.
So this... Ooh. There we are, look. This is the actual chair that Dylan Thomas sat in when he'd be here in the pub with his notepad on the table, scribbling away. Here's the bar. And is this the original bar?
Oh, no. I can remember it. I came to Laugharne in 1961.
Yeah.
And there was virtually a hatchway there.
Right.
And there was a ballroom here.
What, a real one for dancing?
Oh, yes.
Oh. Now, Ron, question I must ask you. Brown's Hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Who was Brown?
To be honest with you, I haven't got a clue.
No?
No.
So, looking for an answer to my question, I crossed the road from Brown's Hotel to the Corran bookshop to ask the owner, George Tremlett, if he knew.
I understand Brown was a doctor.
Right.
And at the house next door, Clarence House, I understand that that was his surgery. But I've never seen it in writing. It's only a sort of passed down piece of verbal tradition. I don't know if it's true.
Right.
That I was told by Mary Evans, whose family had lived in Clarence House for a couple of 100 years.
Yeah.
Brown's Hotel was built in 1752, and it's a typical Georgian building. Sash windows, columns around the doors, and plain brickwork. It was a hotel first, with 23 rooms, then a pub, and is pretty much the same today as when it was renovated in 1938, which is the same year that Brown's most famous customer, Dylan Thomas, moved into town. But what brought Dylan to this small seaside town in the first place? He said that he came one day, for a day, and never left. Got off the bus and forgot to get back on again. But the actor Richard Burton said,
he loved small towns by the sea best, and Welsh small towns by the sea best of all. One day he discovered Laugharne, and that was it. In the words of one of his own characters, he had been lost, he said, and had found a dark retreat to shelter from the bullies in the wind.
Dylan Thomas was born in Swansea and moved here with his wife Caitlin in 1938. Within 2 years, unpaid debts had forced them to leave. But when these had been paid off by friends, the Thomas family, with 3 children now, moved back, this time to the boathouse, bought for them by another friend, Mary Taylor. If Dylan loved Laugharne, he absolutely adored Brown's Hotel. Every morning, without fail, he'd leave the boathouse with a copy of the Times tucked under his arm. I've got the Western Mail. Walk along the lane, past the writing shed to which he'd return that afternoon, and eventually cross the busy main street opposite Brown's to a house with the unusual name of the Pelican, where his dad lived. And there they'd finish the Times crossword in 3 minutes flat, which is about the time it takes me to find the crossword in the Western Mail. Then he'd read his latest poem to his dad before leaving, on his own, for the first drink of the day at Brown's.
There was a clear barrier between them because they never drank together.
Yeah.
And
Did his father drink?
Oh, yes. The father would go down the hill, have a drink at the cross house, and Dylan would go across the road to Brown's.
Well. What was so special about Brown's Hotel? Why didn't he go to the other pubs in the village?
Well, the unusual thing about Brown's is it's a second home for a great many people.
Right.
And people call in there for drink at breakfast time, at least they did in his day. I mean, the hours changed a bit. It was part of the town, people popped in and out. I mean, since I've been here, I once bought a sheep in there.
A sheep?
A sheep, yes, dead. Sliced up. And I bought fish in there, and I bought half a pig. And it was where the town met and talked, and more than any of the pubs at that time.
Right.
And still, to a degree.
Did he drink in the other pubs? Or...
Oh, yes.
Oh, he did?
Yes. He patronised them all, but when people were coming to meet him, he would often say, I'll meet you in the Browns Hotel, rather than ask them to his house.
After the morning session, Dillon would retire to his writing shed for the afternoon, before returning once again to Brown's for, you've guessed it, a few drinks. And with all this drinking going on, I couldn't help wondering, never mind writing poetry, how did he manage to get home at night?
In those days, Laugharne's main street, which is King Street, had some very fine cherry trees. Very impressive, big trees. And at night, when he was going home to the Browns, he would often pee against one of the cherry trees on his way home, you see. And Mary Evans, who lived next door, she had talked about those poor trees. She said they died of urination. When he got home, of course, the funny thing was that if he had a few and he was a bit tight, because the then access to the boathouse was a steep path with a low wall by the side of it, he daren't go down standing upright or he might fall into the river. So he used to go backwards, down on his hands and knees.
On his hands and knees?
On his hands and knees backwards, to avoid falling into the river.
But Dillon didn't fall into the river and drown. He didn't mention it in any of his poems anyway. He survived to write what was probably his greatest work, Under Milk Wood, a play for voices, largely inspired by the people of Laugharne, although the people of Newquay also claim it's based on them.
So, Under Milk Wood, of course, a cast of extraordinary characters. Did Dillon Thomas get the inspiration for any of these characters from local people here?
A lot of the ideas, I think, actually came in this bar. I mean, I first realised that was the case about 30-odd years ago. I was standing just in the corner behind me here one evening, and they suddenly started talking about him, you see, and I just listened, didn't say a word. And he said, funny chap, he used to put his hand in his pocket and take out cigarette paper, cigarette packets, things like that, and he'd scribble a word on, he scribbled a few words on, you see. And he said he was obviously listening to us.
And Milk Wood, Under Milk Wood, it's an unusual sort of a name. Is there a Milk Wood locally?
Yes.
No, seriously?
And I only discovered that quite by accident. A friend of mine who's now dead, Derry Raymond, he said, just past Dickie Milk's Wood, the so-and-so. I said, pardon? He said, Dickie Milk's Wood. I said, which one's that? He pointed out to me, it was owned by Dickie Lewis, who was a farmer and also a milkman.
Ocky milkman on his round. I will say this, his milk's as fresh as the dew. Half dew it is.
Dickie was a Thomas's milkman, and the year before Dillon died, his collection of poems were published. One of the last things he did was he presented the copy to his milkman.
The morning is all singing. The Reverend Eli Jenkins, busy on his morning calls, stops outside the welfare hall to hear Polly Garter as she scrubs the floors for the Mothers' Union dance tonight. I loved a man whose name was Tom. He was strong as a bear and 2 yards long. I loved a man whose name was Dick. Oh, I think we'll stop there. It's getting a bit embarrassing, isn't it? Who else? Polly Garter.
Polly Garter was real, yes. She was a bit, I'm not going to say who. I mean, the aunt of a friend of mine. And
she was the aunt of a friend of yours?
Yes. And she had, I think, 4 babies by different fathers, and she loved them all equally, and you know, she was a good mother.
Right. So those babies would have grown up, and they'll be adults.
Yes, I would think so. Whether they're here or not, I've never made those kind of inquiries.
Yeah, I see. Butcher Bynum?
Butcher Bynum was Carl Einan, the butcher in St Clair's.
Really?
Yes, and the Einan family still run the butchers in St Clair's.
Presumably he doesn't still cook cats and corgis and moles and shrews on Tuesdays.
Well, you know,
we don't know.
He was very proud of it. Of course.
What, he did it?
No. I mean, he's very proud of being in Under Milk Wood.
So, where did Dillon Thomas get the idea for the name of the village in Under Milk Wood? Well, the story is that he wanted to see what he could get out of bugger all. So he wrote the words, on the back of beer mats, and then rearranged them like this. And there it is. Llanegib, the name of the village. Tommy Cooper, eat your heart out. Dylan Thomas described Laugharne as the strangest town in Wales. And that's saying something, let's face it. But maybe one of the things he was thinking of is the corporation.
If you can think back to the 13th century, when it was set up, we had a Norman knight who was living in the castle, and he was on his deathbed. And he wanted to seek divine retribution with God because he felt he'd sinned through his life. And he decided to bequeath all the lands and the castle that he owned at that time to the townsfolk of Laugharne. They formed what is now the corporation. They picked 20 just and true men. Then the 20 men were the jury, grand jury as they call them now. The Portreeve was the head of the jury, and he administered justice.
Do you still do that?
No, not so much now. The jail is still there, but we can't put anyone in, although we need to sometimes.
Organ Morgan's at it early. You can tell it's spring.
Organ Morgan was based on a dignitary within the town.
Was he?
Who was a servant of the corporation. He was also the church organist, and he was a bachelor. But the town knew that he had a lady friend, and he thought that nobody knew, so it was his big secret. And he was Organ Morgan, always playing with his organ.
Oh.
Yes.
It's organ all the time. With
That's
his,
right,
yes,
yeah.
What do the people of Laugharne think about Under Milkwood?
Well, at the time, I mean, I wasn't here then, but I mean, they were quite upset because they realised he was taking real people in the town and poking fun at them. And they didn't like it. There was quite a reaction. Of course, now, 50 years later, they're quite proud of the fact that sort of their uncles or their parents or whatever were the original characters in the play.
Dylan's career had taken off, and in 1950 he took off as well, when he flew to New York for his first American poetry tour. 2 years later, he went back there with Caitlin for a second tour. America was to play a crucial and tragic part for Dylan, Browns and Laugharne. Dylan Thomas left Brown's Hotel for the last time in November 1953. And the day of his funeral was a momentous occasion. Hundreds gathered in the small, steep cemetery next to the church to pay their last respects. No longer would Dylan be seen scribbling down fragments of their conversation in the bar of Brown's Hotel. But Brown still had a leading role to play in the events before and after his funeral.
What happened was he died in New York, and Caitlin insisted that he had to be brought home to Wales. And by hook or by crook, the money was raised, and she travelled back with his coffin. She was drunk on the boat, and then she said, well, can't I go to Dylan? You see? And she was locked in the hold with the coffin. And she sat with the coffin, and what really got to her was that when she got down there were a group of sailors playing cards, using the coffin top as the card deck. She thought that was wonderful. She thought
liked that?
She thought that was natural. She thought he would have liked it, you see.
Right.
The hearse went down to Southampton to pick the coffin up, and they proceeded to drink their way back from Southampton to Laugharne. And the coffin was parked outside various pubs between Southampton and Laugharne. It eventually got back at, I think it was 4 or 5 in the morning, by which time Laugharne had been up since about 6 o'clock the night before waiting for it, and they were all drunk as well, you see. So they unloaded the coffin outside Pelican and couldn't get it in the door, so they had to take out the windows. They found that no one was expecting this, but he'd been put in the bow tie and the mask, and he's been waxed. One person looked inside the coffin and said, oh, he wouldn't be seen dead in a tie like that. By this time, the funeral had taken off. And Fred James, who was a delightful man, he thought he ought to mark the occasion by presenting Caitlin with a box of chocolates. And this was in the middle of the Browns Hotel, and they were all drunk as coots. He suddenly advanced across the room with a box of chocolates. Caitlin, who by then was way over the top, saw a tray of drinks, got a fist like that, whoomph like that, and the drinks went flying up in the air and all over the room, and all over Fred.
Dylan Thomas had been very well known, And he'd made Browns and Laugharne well known too. And there's nothing like celebrity to attract celebrities.
I mean, quite a few famous people have been here. I'm aware. Mick Jagger, he's been?
Mick Jagger.
Yeah.
Pierce Bronson.
Yeah. And you've had, was it Jimmy Carter was here?
Jimmy Carter, another one.
Yeah.
Richard Burton's been here, apparently.
Richard Burton?
Many years ago, yes.
Yeah, I've seen the photographs.
Yeah.
Are there many poets that drink here now?
No, there's some local poets, but they make rhymes up as they go along when they've had a few drinks, but sort of budding Dylan Thomases, if you like.
As I was young and easy, under the apple bough, an apple fell upon my head. I looked up and said, ow.
They come in with notepads and scribble down certain things and ask to take photographs, etc., you know. You get that all the time.
Yeah.
Not as much as it used to be, especially with the Americans.
You don't get so many Americans now?
No, it could be very well because of the hijacking and what happened in America.
Well, it might be that they found out about the dartboard scam.
Well, quite possible they will now, anyway.
Yeah.
As legend has it,
Yeah.
the previous landlord, or Tommy Watts,
Tommy
who
Watts.
owned the Browns,
Yeah.
he would go around collecting old dartboards from various pubs, and the older the better.
Right.
And any time Americans came in, he used to say to them, Dylan used to play on that board, he would say, you know, oh, they'd like to buy it off him, sort of thing, but he'd hesitate for a while and say, oh no, that's famous, and etc. But in the end, he'd give in and he'd sell it.
Yeah, very
But
reluctantly.
Little did they know, he had several sort of old dartboards down in the cellar.
Hundreds more.
And as soon as they disappeared, he'd come up and put another one there.
Yeah.
And that went on and on.
There we are. Well, he was a businessman.
Oh, definitely.
And they were Americans, so
Exactly.
it's fair enough, isn't it? Fair enough.
The Browns Hotel was to play a leading role in Caitlin's funeral in 1994. More than 40 years on, Dylan and Caitlin were reunited. Did Tommy the landlord organise funerals around here? He seemed to be involved with most things.
He was asked, wasn't he?
Well, he was living here for 33 years in the Browns, and one of the most tremendous landlords I've ever met in my life, you know. And I think most people have testified to that. And he was asked, actually, to arrange that particular funeral. The other thing is, at the time, we were both very overweight, but we're not now, as you can see. And they wanted some big boys to carry the coffin at the back.
And it was heavy.
The big boys.
And it was heavy as well, as being big.
If I remember correctly, as we were putting it down into the grave, there was a pretty big clap of thunder.
Yeah.
And Tommy said afterwards, the landlord, they're back together. Because they'd obviously had got into bed to mess his pipe.
So that was the sound of them getting back together
That
again?
was their side, yeah, that was it. Yeah.
And then back here for the... Well, it wouldn't have been a wake, I suppose, but certainly kind of...
Sometimes we have the odd wake here,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah?
The one good thing with the Brownsea is when you've actually been to church for a funeral or a wedding or whatever, you know, this is the first port of call on the way down the road. So it always is a very central part of the township.
In 2004, Browns Hotel found itself with a new owner, Dylan Thomas fan Neil Morrissey, who, appropriately enough, had made his name too as a man behaving badly. And so well known is the pub and its new owner that the sale made the national news.
Browns Hotel, Dylan Thomas's local in Laugharne, has been sold at auction to the actor Neil Morrissey and his business partner for £670,000. The hotel went under the hammer after its landlord decided to retire after 30 years at the famous pub.
So what does the future hold for Browns Hotel?
It's a listed building, and obviously they can't just tear it apart and everything else.
No.
And it will be done right, you know. That's one good thing of it. It'll all have to be put back. I don't think they can alter the bar to a certain extent anyway, because of the historical purpose with Dylan Thomas. But it will be eventually back to a hotel.
Right.
And
Well,
that's
a Dylan
the
Thomas
plans.
theme hotel.
It'll be emphasised on Dylan,
Right.
you know, obviously.
Of course.
I think there's a lot of memorabilia available where they've already got it, and they're going to set up one of the rooms like a sort of a museum for Dylan Thomas memorabilia, and obviously tourists want to come and see it.
Yeah.
So that'll be a good thing.
Well, we've heard a lot about Dylan Thomas and Browns Hotel, but not very much about Laugharne. And I shall now correct that, because I think that this is a very beautiful place in its own right. Never mind poets and all that. In fact, I liked it so much I thought I'd send a postcard home to show the family what they're missing. I won't mention all the drinking and the unfortunate incident with the... yeah, I won't mention that. So, dear all, come to Laugharne. If you like Dylan Thomas, you'll love it. If you like nice pubs, you'll love it. If you like extraordinary characters that could have just walked straight out of a play for voices, you'll love it. And if you're a fan of ancient systems of government more than 700 years old, you'll get off that bus and forget to ever get back on again. Wish you were here, John.